Okay, so first off, apologies to my YouTube followers because I haven't done a proper game review in quite some time. Instead, I was, looking at Twitter the other day, and something interesting came up that I wanted to talk about, and it has to do with the game Cuphead. And for whatever reason, Cuphead has become this flashpoint for debate about difficulty in games and whether it's elitist or not or whatever. And it kind of made me sad because, well, first off, I feel like appreciating a difficult game is something that you learn that we don't start with. The second thing is that I feel like when you play really hard and a game plays really hard back and you really push your own boundaries, exciting things can really happen if you really give it a try. And of course, not everyone will be able to beat every game, and every game, it's nice when it has a difficulty slider. Sometimes I'm personally in the mood for a more relaxed game, but I don't think a game being difficult in itself, especially if it's not a competitive one-on-one game, is necessarily an elitist thing. First let's get one thing out of the way, is there's lots of valid reasons to enjoy games. Some people like them for the story, whether it's kind of generated by what's going on in the game, kind of like SimCity, or whether there's a stronger written storyline or whatever. Some people like it just to experience the art and the music. And, then there are people like me who do enjoy having their butts kicked as long as the game is fair. And as long as the game is fair, it's a learning experience. And the way I always like to put it is that in some games, your character levels up, and in something like an arcade game, you level up. And what's not great about that, right? Now, I think some people probably think that they'll never improve at a game. They look at it, they say, "Oh my God, this is crazy impossible. There's all these shots coming at you," or whatever. And I used to kind of be on that wavelength a little bit more. I had very little faith in myself as a game player, but once I really got into shmups in the late 90s, something happened, and that things started clicking. Once I kind of confronted my fears, as it were, I was able to kind of break through this barrier.
This is the best song in the game.
And I'm not the best shmup player. I like to go to these shmup meets sometimes where pretty much everybody else there is better than I am at these games. But, we drink a lot of cola, we hang out, we talk about game, mechanics and things like that, and just kind of have a good time. And there isn't this kind of era of, "Oh, you suck, you're not good enough," or whatever. There's none of that. It's just good, kind of good-natured fun. And that's the way it should be. We shouldn't be using our skills to talk down to people and exclude them, and that shouldn't happen. That's no good, of course. And I think maybe that's what a difficult game kind of reminds people of in a bad way, and it shouldn't, because I think these games are great. And I don't know about Cuphead specifically, I haven't played it yet. I'm looking forward to playing it tomorrow, actually. Now, easy modes. I have mixed feelings about easy modes. I think oftentimes games generally get balanced the best for one particular difficulty, and the others are kind of tossed in afterwards. There's plenty of shmups where the default is the best experience. I think generally in terms of weapon balance and hit points of enemies and stuff like that, and so even harder difficulties aren't quite balanced right. And oftentimes that means the easy difficulty you're not getting the best experience out of a game there unless the author really put the time in to calibrate that difficulty. And in fact, that brings me to another point, that oftentimes arcade-style games have two games in them. So basically, there's the superficial game that's getting to the end, seeing everything. We're living in an era where the primary goal of so many games is, you play through the story and you sell it back to GameStop, and you move on. You plunk $60 more down for a new interactive movie. Yeah, sorry, that's the curmudgeonly old man in me surfacing. A lot of shmups have a scoring game that you can play forever and just always improve at and always beat your record and find exciting new strategies and techniques in over and over. That's underneath the surface of the superficial game. So even if you've beaten a game, let's say you set it to easy and you credit feed it or whatever, and you get to the end and you see the ending credits, that doesn't necessarily mean you've seen everything that there is in that game because you haven't maybe experienced the meta game. And I would even say that someone who plays a scoring-oriented game halfway through and focuses on the time attack might even be playing or having a better experience than the person who just plays through the whole thing. But we're back to multiple ways of enjoying video games, which is what they're all about. I mean, games are so multifaceted. That's one thing I really like about them. You know, you can play Ikaruga for survival, or you can play it for score. Or you can even score different ways on that one. I know some people, this is kind of an aside, don't like Ikaruga because there's one way to max chain everything, but for someone of my skill level, it's always a trade-off. I'm never going to max chain it. It's always, I got to pick and choose and think quick on the fly, and that's why I like that game. But difficult games have been a really positive influence in my life in general. I didn't do well in school growing up, and games kind of taught me that you can fail and fail and fail and still come out victorious. And I think that's such an important lesson. Especially I feel like in our culture, American culture, we have a idea of kind of the smart kid or the genius, where it's supposed to be effortless, right? Unless you're unless you're doing it no sweat, you're not really smart, are you? And that's so destructive. Games kind of taught me a different lesson. They taught me that you can start out really struggling, and before you know it, with a bit of dedication, you can surpass what you thought your original limits were. I know I keep reiterating this, but it really is. I feel like it's important. And, if you're not having fun with a game like Cuphead, for instance, that's okay too. Games, not every game appeals to every person, and, even, there are games I like in some situations, but not others. For instance, I like FPS games a lot, especially old school stuff like Doom, but a lot of times competitively, I don't enjoy them, or I'll like a game like Street Fighter against friends, but not against random people who are much better than I am, because oftentimes I feel like it doesn't give me enough chance to really learn. I'm just kind of getting my butt kicked left and right and somehow just never clicks with me. So there are definitely games that are great games that I don't personally have a great deal of fun with. So if you're not enjoying it, if a game's hard and you're not enjoying it, that's fine too. It's definitely not your failing. It's more that it just didn't vibe with you, and that's cool. A game like R-Type, for instance. I love shmups, but I never could get into R-Type or Gradius because it just gets so much into memorization that I stop having fun. It's so unforgiving, and it's really more about. Sometimes I feel like the developer is sitting there saying, "Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you, sucker?" And for me, that's not fun. Memorizers for me aren't fun games. I like memorizing maybe enemy patterns, but not entire level patterns. But that's a completely personal preference. Lots of people love R-Type. It's considered widely to be this kind of a foundational game almost. And that's one thing I want to touch on too, is there are different kinds of hard. People say NES hard, and when I revisit NES games, don't get mad at me, but I think a lot of NES games are a bit cheap. They're the kind of thing where you jump, you leave the ground, it scrolls over, and something aerial hits you that you would have to have played the level before to ever be able to dodge it. And I personally don't think that's very fair. That's not the kind of hard that I personally enjoy. Some people, like taking a game that does sucker punches and beating it, and they get a satisfaction from that. But yeah, there's different kinds of hard. You might enjoy some kinds of hard games and not others, or some kinds of games you might take for granted. People tell me that Super Mario Bros. 1 is really easy, but my suspicion is that it's because they played it so much as a kid, and they weren't getting frustrated because they were so young, and they had so much free time. I remember being very frustrated with that game, to the point that it took me many years to really appreciate it, because my experience playing it was very much, I guess what people like to call get good culture, where, it was like, oh no, what are you doing, you dummy? Don't get that mushroom. Oh my god, you suck, and, and so it took me a long time to kind of get over that and appreciate it for being a great game that it is. So anyway, that's kind of my big ramble, and, hopefully, I guess I was going to say hopefully you agree, but if you disagree, that's cool too. just want to kind of give people my perspective and why I like hard games and why I don't think it's necessarily this toxic thing that a game is really hard. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rant. See you later. And speaking of not fair, watch this. Not to toot my own horn, but I've won credited up to this point.
Oh no! Well... Wow. No!